All right. I'm going live because, for one thing, I never got around to doing my video yesterday. I was going to read yesterday, last night, but I lost the energy for it, and, well, I ended up going to bed a little later after I made that post, but I may read tonight, but I had to go live because there's a lot of crazy narratives, as usual. I've already addressed a lot of these narratives, but I have to address them again because they just don't stop, you know? All one has to do, literally, is whenever there's a crazy story that comes out, and even if you see it on, like, some YouTube channel, go look and see if it's in Western mainstream media sources. If it is, well, you've basically seen that it was a parroted story. You see, the way mainstream media has infiltrated alternative media is that mainstream media has now basically counted on people to pass along their stories. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about a few different things I see. For one, it's not just the crazy nuke hype and hysteria stories that seem to happen every other month. It's always the same thing. And we already know. I've already discussed that that's not even biblical from the standpoint of how America is destroyed with armies. It's not mentioned once. It's not mentioned twice. It's not even mentioned 3 times in Jeremiah 50:51. No, it's mentioned multiple times that we get invaded by massive armies. We don't get blanketed by nukes. It doesn't say that. And also, the word fire in the Bible is synonymous with warfare in general. Not nukes, with warfare. It just means warfare in general, because it's described ancient wars every bit as much as it describes future wars and prophecies. So it just is describing warfare in general. Now, the city of Babylon being destroyed in 1 hour, now that's the city of Babylon, not the nation is talking about. The city of Babylon could be destroyed by nukes. I mean, if it's destroyed in 1 hour, I mean, that would describe something like that, right? I mean, very, very seemingly would be, but the nation of Babylon is destroyed by armies. We know this. We know this. But what I'm talking about is there's other narratives going on. Oh, hey, everybody. Yeah, I just got started, Michael, and Angry Scandinavian, or Tommy. How you doing, Tommy? And TT and Ify, IFFI. I just got started. I've just seen a lot of crazy things coming out in the news. I mean, these are really absurd, bizarre things that I've already addressed. Now, allegedly, now this is really funny because I've already addressed this too. Allegedly, the American regime is warning Americans that they should leave Russia. So you should come back to a collapsing nation and leave a prosperous nation, because it's true. It's actually true. I'm not talking up Russia and talking down America. I'm just telling the truth. America is collapsing, and Russia's actually having an economic boom, but they're asking those people to leave a prosperous nation to come back to a collapsing nation, and they want them to do it right now. And what is the reason they gave? This is hilarious. Now, this is funny. Now remember, I've already told you that they're mobilizing their reserves. They're not doing a general mobilization in Russia. They are not doing a general mobilization in Russia. They're not mobilizing. Now, this is funny. This is where it gets funny, okay? I guess it's the embassy has put out something saying that they are going to mobilize foreign civilians for Putin's army in Russia. Now, that doesn't even sound right, okay? That doesn't even sound right. Listen, even if Russia was doing a general mobilization, do people not understand that, yes, I know they're not as populated as the United States. We have twice as many people as they do, basically. But they have nearly, it's between 145 and 150 million people, okay? It's almost half our population. Why would they need to mobilize foreign civilians within Russia for the Russian armed forces? That doesn't make any sort of sense. Russia was never losing in Ukraine to begin with. They were not losing. It was a limited incursion. They haven't even used, but yeah, I mean, and this is if that, it's probably not, but they haven't even used like 5% of their overall military capacity to wage war, and that's personnel and equipment. Okay, so this is laughable. This is absurd. They're warning people to get out of Russia because allegedly Russia is going to draft foreigners that are inside of Russia for their army. So what? There's not enough Russians for that if they had to do it. They're not doing that, but if they had to do it, so there's not enough Russians in Russia. Okay, so demographically, if you look at Russia, I'm going to do this by some numbers, okay? Demographically, when looking at Russia, their military-aged male population in Russia, now Russia does have a slight demographic problem whereby a lot of their population is actually over the age of 35, and that's men and women, okay? But still, regardless, demographically, if the Russians had to mobilize everybody between the ages of 18 and 35, okay, we'll just say 18 to 35, if they had to mobilize everybody between that, we'll just say just the men. We'll say just the men, not even the women, okay? If they had to mobilize all the men within 18 to 35 age bracket within Russia, they would have the option. And now let's be fair too. Let's say that some people had physical disabilities that would permit them from joining, or they had certain jobs like, specialty trades or jobs that would permit them from, joining the Russian armed forces. So let's say we take a few million out of that. Okay? They would still have, okay? I'm saying if they took out, a few million people that had either specialty jobs and also physical disabilities now, they would still have between like 12 and 14 million men. 12 and 14 million men if they had to choose, that they would have to choose from, if you took out the other 2 million, which would be like 16 million total, they would still have like 12, or so million, 12 to 14 million that they could pick from for their armed forces of Russian men, okay? Of Russian men. So that's not enough. That's not enough. That you gotta like draft foreigners too. That's laughable. That's absurd. That's absurd, man. That is laughable. That's laughable. And there's a close amount of women in that same age bracket. So we're talking about some nearly, this is about as close as it gets. We're talking about around 30 million people within that, the 18 to 35 age bracket, okay? The 18 to 35 age bracket. Now, like I said, most people in Russia are over the age of 35, men and women, okay? men and women. But under, from that military age, the 18 to 35, you have about, give or take a 1 to 2 million, you have about 30 million. That's the best estimate I can do while I'm sitting here on my live stream. I had looked at this a few days ago because that interested me, because I was actually talking to somebody about this and I wanted to go and check the numbers to make sure it was right. And that's what I found, was that the military age men would be between 12 and 14 million if you also took out 2 million that would either have physical disabilities, because you have to have a margin of error. If you took about 2 million out, which would, be a grand total of 15, 16 million. If you took another 2 million out with specialty jobs, trades, and, disabilities that would permit them from service, you would still get somewhere between 12 and 14 million that could serve. And I'm just talking about just the men, not even the roughly equivalent number of women in that age bracket. So for them to say that they need to recruit foreigners is completely absurd. It's completely absurd. How would they make Americans fight in the Russian armed forces? Now, these could be either business people or expatriates that ended up going and living over there. That's just absurd. That is the most bizarre narrative I think I've ever heard in my life. It doesn't make any sort of sense whatsoever at all. That is something that, nobody would do. I don't think any nation would ever resort to such means. I really don't. I mean, because you would have a lot of questions. You would have questions of loyalty to the cause and a whole bunch of other things. That type of stuff hasn't happened in this world for quite some time. I can't even recall the last time something like that even occurred that I can remember. I mean, during World War II, you had instances of that, but apart from that, I'm talking about in the late 20th century and into the 21st century so far, I have not heard of anything beyond World War II where things like that occurred on a massive scale. I think that's something that maybe third world nations have tried to do, but I don't think it worked out too well for them if they did try it, because there's a lot of hiccups and logistical issues that would cause because of the language barriers. I mean, that's people don't even think about stuff like that. It's there'd be so many problems inherent with trying to assimilate foreigners of all different types into your nation's armed forces, when a lot of them don't speak the proficient native tongue, and they don't understand the customs or they're not soldiers to begin with, so it would be a hell of a problem to have to train people like that. I mean, granted, not everybody that's there, and that goes for any nation, speaks the native tongue of that nation exceedingly well. There's people that go to other countries that are like tourists or travelers. They just know just enough to get around. Now take me, for instance. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch jetzt, aber jetzt mein Deutsch ist nicht so spitze. I just said, I speak a little bit of German now, but right now my German's not so sharp. My German was much better. Mein Deutsch war mehr besser. I said my German was much better. Back in the day when I was a foreign exchange student in 2001, it was a lot better than it is today. A lot better. But I still speak enough, where I'm fairly proficient, but it's not as good as it once was. Now, if I were to go to France, my French is horrible compared to my German. If I were to go to France, I would speak just enough to order food and maybe ask directions to places, and that would be it. I mean, I'm not, if the French tried to like induct me into their armed forces, they would have a hard time training me. I mean, I'm already a soldier anyway, but I'm saying, and I'm talking in terms of like what they would want me to do, for their armed forces, whatever type of equipment they had, and them trying to explain to me how the digits and widgets work and everything. I wouldn't be able to understand what they were saying. They have different equipment. So it's like, I'm talking about like their vehicles and things like that. It's like, I wouldn't, they wouldn't be able to teach me how to operate a French vehicle in French because I wouldn't really understand that much French. So it's like, people have to think about things like that. I'm just using a goofy example there, but, you know, people are not thinking of all the logistical issues of training and other matters as it relates to the language barrier. And that's just one problem. The other problem would be loyalty to the cause. You're not, conscript armies are massively inefficient when compared to professional armies, okay? Why do you think that the United States got rid of its conscription like we did in Vietnam? We had conscription, we had draft back in Vietnam. Why do people think we got rid of the draft? Because we realized we needed a professional volunteer force. Don't people know that Russia's force is a professional all-volunteer force? Do people not understand that? Do people not understand they have 2 million reserves, and those reserves are all part-timers like our reserves here? That they're all professional because they're all volunteers, just like their active duty military? They don't have conscription, not no more. For them to have conscription, they too would have to bring it back. China, China is part conscript and it's part professional. It's been reorganized, but they have a professional force, but they still obviously have a lot of conscription because their military is massive. It's massive because of their paramilitary and their active military, their regular military. So when I see narratives like this going on, it often makes me laugh because it's like, who comes up with this stuff? How stupid do they think we are that we believe such nonsense? I mean, it's completely absurd. What kind of nonsense is going on here? I think because people have such a minute understanding of how things like that work, they think that they can get away with putting out such nonsense like that. It's just so absurd, some of this stuff. Yeah. Well, that's good, Tommy. It's good to hear you say that. But yeah, the other thing that besides that whole nonsense, and we already know, okay, we already know that they're not doing a general conscription. We know that they're calling up their reserves. They're calling up their reserves. I've said it. Other channels have said it, like the Duran channel, and they watch Russia pretty close as well, like I do. I watch Russia and I watch China, and you all know that. They watch Russia closely. Other channels do too. It's largely these Western media channels that parrot media narratives that are saying this type of nonsense, but it's just absurd. It's absurd. But you got to go to the source if you want to know exactly what's going on in the source. You have to go to Russia, to Russian sources to see what they're really doing. They're not doing a general mobilization. They're mobilizing their reserves, and that's coming out of their part-time forces, because that's what a reserve force is. Reserves are citizen soldiers. Then when you go to Western media, they spin that into a narrative of, they're mobilizing their civilians. They're mobilizing their civilians. No, they're calling up reserves who are just like our reserves, who come from our communities because they live amongst the civilian population. That's what reserves are. Reserves are part-time troops that live as civilians in the community but can be called up into the military. They're not doing a general mobilization where they do a draft where they have conscription. See, see, do you all see how things get spun in the news? Do you see all that, how the media spin works? How they'll take something and they'll, make it into something else? Because reserves live in the communities, they're going to take that and say that they're mobilizing Russia's civilian population. No, they're calling up the reserves, who are just like our reserves and they live in our communities. So they take that and spin that into they're mobilizing the civilian population. How absurd is that? It's just bizarre. Okay, the other thing, Germany has made a lot of headlines lately too. We saw what they did by stealing. Now, they did do this. They stole Russian property, and I put that in my post last night. And I even posted that as a community post because somebody else had made a video addressing that. They had stolen Russian property in the form of the refineries that belong to these Russian energy companies, okay? So they stole those refineries. Germany did this. Then you had Nord Stream 2, which was essentially a dead project. It was a dead project since this entire Ukraine thing began. It was a dead project for many months. And we all knew that it was never going to be completed, okay? They were never going to finish that. They were never going to get it online and running, okay? And now it's destroyed. And yes, it's correct. It would take submarines to do that. But here's the deal. Whether it was German submarines, like their extremely quiet diesel-electric powered submarines like the Type 212 class, Germany still makes some damn good submarines. But the problem with the German armed forces is, like I've said many times, they have slimmed down their forces to extremely small levels. Extremely small levels. While Germany does have some very good military technology, they like their diesel electric subs are extremely quiet. The missiles they fire that come out of their torpedo tubes or the IDAS missile. That's quite an effective weapon against everything from aircraft, so they can target anti-submarine warfare helicopters, low-flying attack aircraft, like ground attack aircraft that are also used for maritime patrols. They can be fired at surface ships, and the IDAS missile can also even be fired at land targets, and also the torpedoes they fire and everything too. They have a lot of very high-tech equipment and sensors aboard their submarines, and they're very quiet for a diesel-electric sub. Italy also uses the same class of sub, and the Germans build those subs, as do the Italians by license. But they're very efficient subs. They're very good. So the Germans could have been the ones that destroyed the pipeline, knowing what we know about them liking to steal other people's property lately. Shame on them for that. But they stealing is always wrong. It doesn't matter who does it and why they did it. Stealing is wrong. They stole entire refineries. They're probably the ones that destroyed the gas pipeline, owing to their past behavior, their recent past behavior, and past behavior during this whole fiasco in Eastern Europe. But, it could have been the Americans too, or the Americans just said, okay, Germany, you can destroy it, and we'll back you up on it, Either way, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was the West, the collective West, whether America did it or Germany did it, it was the collective West trying to save face for Europe's energy crisis. They're trying to save face. They destroyed it so they can either try to blame it on somebody else or something else when they're the ones that did it. And that's how they're trying to play their people in Europe like some fools. You know, now, in all fairness, the people of Europe are as much to blame, by and large, as the regimes of Europe are to blame. Why? Because the people of Europe jumped on the whole bandwagon with the sanctions and with getting tough on Russia, getting harsh against Russia. They jumped on that bandwagon for the most part. The people of Europe supported this. They supported this getting involved in that conflict by sending arms and mercenaries and other assets, NATO advisors since the beginning, like the ones that were trapped under Azovstal, as they say. So, they were under the Azovstal, and, some of them were caught. We probably won't know what all their names are, of course, because that's an embarrassment to NATO, that came from these various European NATO nations, probably some Americans too. They're not going to know all the names of the Westerners that were caught there doing dirty deeds, but, they had no business getting involved in a Russian-Ukrainian conflict. No business whatsoever at all. You've got corrupt Ukraine fighting against, evil Russia. They're both bad. They're both bad. They're both really bad nations. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's a Western nation, a Western proxy nation, or if it's an Eastern nation, Eastern proxy. They're all evil. They're all evil, and they all do different evil shit, okay? Just different flavors of evil. There's so many different flavors of evil. The evil comes in many flavors, okay? I'll just put it that way. Like assorted candies, evil comes in many flavors. So whether it's East or West or any of their proxies, it's all evil. But what I'm saying is that in a conflict that Europe had really nothing to do with, and I'm talking about Western Europe, they should have stayed out of it for their own best interests. For their own best interests. So they could keep continuing to get Russian energy on the cheap to power their industries, to power their homes, to power their nations with in Western Europe. They had an abundant, cheap energy source, and they totally screwed it off. I mean, like, they totally pissed it away by getting involved in that. They had no business jumping on that bandwagon. So the people of Europe, which are largely sheeple that go along with their evil, twisted regimes there, they should have been out in the streets saying, "Oh, hell no, we're not going to send them weapons. We're not going to get involved in this. No, we're going to stay the hell out of this because that's who we get our energy from." But instead, they bit the hand that feeded them, that fed them. It fed them. They bit the hand that fed them their cheap energy. They bit the hand that fed them. So what they're going to get, well, is what they're going to get. It's hard to feel bad for people who go along with stupid, imbecilic, bullshit nonsense. It's hard to feel bad for them, It's the same way here in America when you see people going along with some of the idiocy that's been done in this nation as well, or that this nation's done around the world with its horrible foreign policy. It's hard to feel bad for the imbeciles that live in North America either, like the people that didn't prep, like the people that didn't arm themselves, like the people that didn't train, or the people that didn't go and put caches of supplies out in nature, in the woods, or out in the desert, or wherever, buried somewhere, stowed away safely somewhere. It's extremely difficult to feel bad for people like that did not do those things that they know they should have done. It's very hard. It's very, very difficult. I would be lying, I would be disingenuous if I said, oh, well, they made a mistake, but it's all okay, it's all good. No, it's not all good. It's not all good. Don't people understand that part of judgment is taking responsibility when you've done wrong and it catches up to you? That's part of judgment. You don't get to live the high life, the champagne life, screwing off money life, and where you didn't prepare, and then you go to the people that did prepare and beg them for stuff. That's not okay. So you get to live the high life, and then you get to live off of people who didn't get to live the high life, who sacrificed to store things away. No, that's all the way wrong. That's just part of judgment. The one who stores up, who sacrifices the worldly pleasures of life so that they can store up, so that they can be prepared, while others didn't. No, I don't feel bad for those people who didn't. It's one thing. It's one thing if it's somebody who is at least trying to do the right thing, or it was somebody who was a innocent person, like a disabled person, or a youngster, who was innocent, who had no say in anything. It's one thing if it's young people or disabled people or the elderly. Those are the ones I feel bad for, because those are the ones who would have difficulties doing such things, okay? Young people, able-bodied people who did not store away when times were good for doing so, who wanted to party and live the high life. No, I don't feel bad for them. Not one bit. Not one bit. Part of their judgment for doing that is to endure and suffer what they caused upon themselves. That's just that's in the word too. That theme is all throughout the word, okay? It's you get what you get as far as what you chose to do with your life, whether you chose to be a sinner or whether you chose to do the right thing and prepare. Look at the people in Noah's day. While he was building the ark, they mocked him. They were partying. They were giving away in marriage and marrying. They were having parties. They were living it up. They were, drinking and drugging and doing all their things. But then they begged Noah to get on the ark, didn't they? Nope. Too late. You see what I'm saying? I don't feel bad for people like that. They get what they get. People that are stupid sheeple that go along with whatever evil regimes tell them to do, I don't feel bad for them either. I don't. So my people perish for a lack of knowledge. My people perish for a lack of what? A lack of what? Knowledge. That's in the word too. And that verse has never rung more true, ever. That has never rung more true than ever. Yeah, Cheeto, but, mercy has to do with how you help people that were in positions that couldn't help themselves. They could not help themselves. Look at the days of Noah, my friend. Noah didn't show mercy to the people that begged to be let on the ark. God shut the door. God didn't care either. God drowned them. God flooded the world, That's what I'm talking about here. The people that need mercy are the people that couldn't do anything about their situation. The people that were helpless in their situation are they who should be shown the mercy. Like, if I have a choice, if I have food that I can share, I'm going to share the food with a youngster or an elderly person or a disabled person before I would share that food with an able-bodied person. Do you understand what I'm saying? The mercy, you have to delegate that appropriately. People that were able-bodied, they come begging. I'm going to ask them, what did you do with your money? What did you do with your time? What did you do with your, did you even work? Did you have any way to prepare? I'm more inclined to help somebody who couldn't help themselves than I am to help an able-bodied person who wasn't even trying. That's how I feel very strongly about that, because that's a theme all throughout the Bible. The able-bodied should have been preparing and not partying, not living the high life, and then expecting to come to people for help, and live off of their hard efforts at preparing. People that forsook the good life, the high life, so that they could prepare, That's not right. If people are preparing and they're forsaking the fun that they could have been having, and they're forsaking that to prepare, why should somebody that partied and pissed away their money be then able to come and leech off of those who prepared? That's not right. There's nothing right about that. There's nothing correct or right about that. It's different when somebody was at least trying or making an attempt to try to do the right thing, whereas somebody who was partying and pissing away money left and right, no, I don't feel bad for them. I don't, because they should have known better. It's like how God says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Well, you can apply that in some sense to people that piss away their money or go along with stupid things. Yeah, material stuff's not important, but it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Go read your word. The Bible tells us to prep. That's a theme all throughout the word. Material things are important when it comes to prepping. I'm talking about it in the context. You're obviously not listening to me, because I'm talking about it in the context of preparedness. Preparedness is important. Spiritual and physical, because God put us in a physical world, because we're equally yoked to the spiritual and physical. Now, if you're in here trolling, then you need to get out of here, or one of my mods needs to kick you out, because I don't tolerate disrespect, and I don't tolerate ignorant statements from people that don't know what the hell they're even talking about. So go read your word, and maybe you'll see that there's very physical things in the word all throughout it. You have to do physical things in this world. It's not all spiritual, but it's not all physical. You're equally yoked to both. God put us in a physical world to do physical things. You don't just get to sit on your ass and expect God to do everything for you. You have to take initiative, and if you take initiative, God will meet you halfway. That's a theme all throughout the word. Goliath didn't just sit there and expect God to smite. David didn't expect God to smite Goliath. David didn't just sit down on his ass and say, oh God, I don't feel like fighting Goliath. Will you knock him over? Noah didn't just sit on his ass and say, God, will you build the ark? Because I don't feel like doing it. No. Read your word. Same with Joseph. Joseph didn't just sit on his ass and expect God to harvest all the grain and then say, oh God, will you also store it away for me? Because I don't have to do anything. I just get to sit on my ass and I expect you to do everything. No, it doesn't work like that. Shema didn't have to, he didn't sit on his ass and let the Philistines beat the shit out of him because he expected God to knock them all dead for him. No, Shammah picked up his ox goad or his spear, whichever account you're reading. Some Bibles have it as a spear, some have it as an ox goad, a farming tool. He picked that up and he killed all 600 Philistine aggressors. He didn't just sit on his ass and expect God to knock them all dead for him. It doesn't work like that. You live in a physical world where you have to do physical things, and that includes preparedness things, and it includes self-defense things. You don't just get to sit on your ass and do nothing. It doesn't work like that. Hey, El Romero, I hadn't seen you in a long time, buddy. Well, welcome, welcome. Cheeto, that's Cheeto. Listen, man, listen. If people come to you and they were pissing away their money and everything else, it's part of their judgment to have to endure the consequences, though, man. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I've been saying. Why would you turn down people that need the help more than somebody who's able-bodied? Like, why would you turn down a disabled person or a youngster? Like, people that had no say in anything, why would you turn them down to give someone who could have done better for themselves the help instead? Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, you got to prioritize. We all have limited resources, man. It's not like we can, like, help every single solitary person. We only have so much that we put up. When it comes to you and your family making it, you and your family come first. Then what you have left over that you can share, because we all have limited resources, then you share. But what I'm saying is, how are you going to budget that? Why wouldn't you help people that needed the help most first? Why would you help somebody who was able-bodied, who could have done better, who was pissing away their money? That's what I'm saying. Like, you should be helping people that need the help most first. You should be helping the disabled. You should be helping the widows, the orphans, the youngsters. Like, that's what the Bible actually tells us to do. Help the widows and the orphans, the blind, the ill, the sick, the disabled. Not the able-bodied first. It doesn't say that. No, you help the widows, the orphans, the sick, and the blind and the deaf, the people that are disabled. You help the disabled, the sick, and the widows and orphans. You help them first. The disabled and disabled people in general. The able-bodied people are like the last priority because they should have done better with their lives, and it's their judgment that they receive, because God is also a God of judgment. It's not just mercy. God is a God of judgment, but also of mercy, depending on what happens. Depending on what course of action people take. Why? Because God gave us all free will. People don't like to hear that, but that's a fact. It's a reality. It's all throughout the Bible. People paint God to be strictly mercy and love, but they forget about the judgment part. God is also a God of judgment, a God of punishment. If you do evil, you will be punished if you're unrepentant. People do know better. There's people in America and everywhere else that know that God and that Yeshua is real, but they turned their back on him. That's why I always say this nation had the light of Yeshua. People here know he's real, but they deny him. They deny him because they've embraced Satan. They've even took his mark. They took the mark of the beast. It's like those people can't be saved, for one thing. But then there's another thing. It's like the people that willingly deny Yeshua Messiah, the true Messiah, the Savior, they deny God, Those people deserve what they're getting as far as judgment because they willingly turned their back. They knew he's real, they knew he existed, but they turned their back on him. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You got to prioritize. You know, God isn't going to show mercy during a time of separation of the wheat and the tares. This is the separation of the wheat and the tares. It's like people forget that. God's not showing mercy to the tares. You know, we have to show mercy to the wheat that needs our help. You can't help the tares. You know, the tares that should have done better, that knew better. You can't help the tares. The tares are being gathered first to be burned. You know, my friend Rebecca sent me something. It was a really good video. It's called Iron Mixed with Clay. And it really, the guy is pretty well studied that was doing the video. And he said that the tares are going to be gathered first. So the whole pre-trib rapture doctrine is dangerous. Whether anything like it occurs or not, the tares are being gathered and burned first. So, you know, that was really interesting when he said that. You know, I watched that a few nights ago. But there's a lot of things it's like people are overlooking. They're overlooking, and all I'm doing is bringing attention to them. This is my channel, okay? If people don't like what I talk about on my channel, then get on down the road, you know? I'm sharing on my channel what I feel is important to share, okay? So, I shared about these media narratives, about how much BS a lot of that is. You can really know day to day the narratives are being proliferated through the media by these channels that pick up these MSM stories and repackage them and rebroadcast them on their channels. All you have to do to know if it's a bunk story or not is go see if it's being reported in MSM. If it's being reported by the mainstream media, then it's a lie. Then it's a bunk story, or at least most of it's a lie. Or it's a complete fabrication or spin off of something else, like this conscription story, which is total bullshit, complete total bullshit. I just get so fed up with a lot of the stuff I see. Now, you know, a lot of people don't like my approach. They don't like the things I talk about on my channel. They don't, you know, I'm very heavily shadow banned. My stuff doesn't get shared out very often. Because people don't like they think I'm too intense, or they think I'm this, or they think I'm that. I'm an ex-combat soldier of the American Armed Forces, U.S. Army. Okay, I served in Iraq. I have brain damage, which causes me to have speech issues here and there, seizures. Sometimes it causes me memory issues. I am intense, but I'm authentic. I'm authentic. Unlike so many others. There's a lot of people that are lying about a lot of things. But I've done nothing but tell people the truth about everything that I get up here and talk about. Everything. And if people don't like that, if people don't like me telling the truth about not just myself, but also about things I see, then get down the road. You're not needed here. This is for people that are serious about navigating wars in the future and knowing the mechanics of how these things work as far as military doctrines, as far as how the Bible relates to self-defense and wars, and how prophecy is literally coming to pass, and how the physical things of this world are manifesting those prophecies in our real time and space. It's happening all around us. So if people want to shut their ears and open their mouths, or in this case, shut off their brains and hit up the keyboard, type a bunch of BS that, for one thing, doesn't even make sense and it's completely irrelevant in the context of what I'm talking about, and for another thing, seems pretty arrogant, then don't be on this channel. You are free to shut this video off or any of my videos and get on down the road. This is not a mamby-pamby, doppelganger of Yeshua Messiah channel like so many of these fluff channels are. Fluff channels. They're fluff and puff channels. They're sissified, wokeified Christianity channels. I'm not with all that shit. I'm not with all that mamby-pamby garbage and this fake Jesuit created doppelganger of Yeshua Messiah. He's a mighty warrior king, but the Jesuits take him being a sacrifice and they spun a whole religion around it. Catholicism, with all its idolatry and everything else. They spun a whole false religion around, taking his sacrifice and turning it into something that it isn't. He came as a sacrifice for the sins of man, nothing more, nothing less. But they built this whole pacifist doctrine around it. And that's wrong, because Yeshua Messiah is a mighty warrior king, king of kings. He's a warrior king. He's not a hippie Barney the dinosaur, get my ass kicked all the way around king. He's a mighty warrior king. And he expects his able-bodied male followers to have enough balls to protect themselves and their families. Absolutely he does. I'm sick of this bullshit, fake rendition that's been created by man-made religions, and the Jesuit order, who influences the Catholic Church, who also influences man-made Protestant churches. It's all total garbage. Stop listening to false teachers and read the Bible for yourself. You'll find all these things out, because the Spirit of God will touch you and you will see these things for the reality that they are. I'm not lying to you about this. I'm not lying to you about none of this. Open your Bible and read it for yourself, and you'll see the same things that I've seen. Now, I might read my story later, and my story isn't for the faint of heart, for the weak. My story is meant, the whole purpose of it is to convey the realities of warfare, because now I'm really getting into the meat of it. It's going to convey things like atrocities. It's going to convey things like more battles. They're going to get more intense. I'm going to read my story later, God willing, tonight. So I'm sharing my experiences as a soldier mixed together with what I know about our enemies, okay? That's why I wrote these stories, so you can make realistic planning based not on misconceptions about how these things will be, but based on the realities of how these things will be. I hope that's understood by people. That's the whole purpose of these things, of the work I do on this channel. It's to shatter misconceptions and false narratives and false ideas to convey the realities of real life, okay? That's why I do what I do here. Hope everybody has a blessed day. Going on a while, so I'm going to address the chat before I say my farewells. Hey, Crystal and Tommy and Oh, hey, Lady M. Hadn't seen you in a minute. Exactly, Lady M. All this mamby-pamby fake doppelganger version of Yeshua and these and cherry picking verses to only pick the softest sounding verses. That's all something that's a strategy that the Jesuits employ and gotten a whole group of people to embrace it because there's a bunch of cowards out there, cowards who embrace this soft effeminate version of our faith. They this false version of our faith, might I add, this false effeminate version of our faith, where they created a doppelganger of the real Yeshua Messiah. They made an effeminate hippie version of him that looks like a weakling that gets his ass beat everywhere. Like that's what the Jesuits created. They created that. That is a completely man-made mental construct, a false doppelganger of Yeshua Messiah. And it's very wicked because it's not the true Yeshua. Read the Bible and you'll see that Yeshua Messiah, while all good and righteous, is also very masculine, very tough, and he is a warrior, not a pansy. But this fake, effeminate version that they've created, like someone else said, someone else that some people listen to by the name of Master's Voice Prophecy blog, well, she said it too. She said that there's a fake doppelganger of him that has been given life to in the spirit realm that isn't the true Yeshua. It's a different Yeshua. I believe that. I believe that. Because the real Yeshua Messiah is not some effeminate Barney the dinosaur, I love you. It's not that. It's not that. The real Yeshua Messiah is a mighty warrior king of kings. He's all powerful, and he's not this weak, fluffy, effeminate weakling that lets people beat on him. He came for a sacrifice, but then that's been spun into that he's always some sort of an effeminate weakling. That's disgusting. It's disgusting. Just because he came as a sacrifice one time, that somehow got spun into him being some sort of effeminate weakling. That's disgusting. Hey, what's going on, letter A? Or A, I guess. How are you doing? Hey, Katrina AZ and AK-47 and Crystal and the Galapagos. Yeah, Galapagos. Yeah, God isn't going to do everything for people because, that's the nature of God. God expects his people to be proactive, whether that's in preparedness, whether it's in self-defense, whether it's in protecting others, whether it's in doing, good for people that can't do right for themselves because they're disabled or they're orphans or widows or whatever. The Bible clearly instructs those are the people that we should be helping, not the able-bodied that could have done better. Hey, Boris, great to see you, man. Great to see you. You're the guy that translated the Xi Jinping billboard. And Romero, great to see you. And Cheeto. Cheeto, you shouldn't be talking about the things you talked about on other streams. You're telling me I judge others. I'm not judging shit. I'm just talking about real things. You've been talking about things that you shouldn't have talked about on my friend Rebecca's stream. I'm going to bring that up now that I saw you say that. I was going to let you off the hook for that, but I heard about what you were talking about that perverted stuff you were bringing up over there, and I don't think that's right. Well, then get on down the road then, Cheeto. You don't like what I'm talking about? I don't like what you're about either. Get on down the road. Hey, cats. Hope you're having a blessed day. Hope your cats are doing well. My cats are doing pretty good, too. They've been really playful lately, and that's a good sign. Oh, yeah, no problem, Lady M. No problem. You all have a blessed day. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here.